Hello, John. Thank you so much for joining me on this venture, an adventure, as we speak about not only our trajectories but shaping your journey is my theme of this. And people who I have come across in my travels or in my own life, in my professional or otherwise, and that whole idea of wherever we go and whatever we do, what is it besides becoming really good at what we do? And obviously that's a given. I mean, you want to do that and you should be able to do that. But to get to your mission, to get to that place, you can't do it alone. So those people who come across our paths and either point a direction or open a door or suggest or introduce, those kinds of things have always been fascinating for me. Because I come from the village. I was born in the village, and everyone was responsible, and everybody was responsible to make sure that everybody was okay. And so to this day, I still tell my students, aside from being really good at what you do and being great at what you do, you also have to be responsible and be part of somebody else's success. And that's important, because if everybody's okay, then you'll be okay. And everything will be okay, and everybody's happy. That's my thinking. So before we get into that, tell me what your thought on that is, John.
Oh no, I think you're quite right. But you have to think about how you're going to interact. You're going to interact as a participant, perhaps as part of the creative process. It all depends on where you come from, what you've done, and what you see happening in the world.
Right. I mean, in your case, in your particular case, I mean, you and I met. The first time we met, and I'll turn around to that. It was in Ottawa at one point. But before that, tell us a little bit of your background, where you're from, and your own travel, your trajectory, what took you from the beginning a little bit.
I've actually lived in Canada most of my life, although I've traveled just about everywhere looking for some really unique talent. But I come from Montreal, which was a hotbed of talent in the 50s and 60s that I grew up in. And that's where I had the opportunity to become a musician and began playing with different groups. And one of those groups we had a television show called the New Generation, CBC. And we also, I put together a small folk trio in those days called All the King's Men. And we traveled to and lived in New York for a couple of years, playing at different clubs. But I felt strongly that my interest lied mostly in the management of these activities. I was a reasonable musician, and but I wanted to play chess with the musicians that I worked with.
Interesting.
So I came back to Canada. To go to university and get some degrees, which I did in the theater at the University of Guelph and University of Calgary, Alberta, and that let me open some doors on the management side of things. And I began running art centers. For example, I was the first director of the Halifax, the Rebecca Cohen Auditorium there. And from there, I went to the Canada Council, where I ran the touring office of the Canada Council.
That's right.
That's where I started to see the wealth of talent that was in this country.
And I remember when I grew up in Ottawa, but moved to Montreal to study here and became part of a group called Repercussion. And it was at one point that I came across your path when we got kind of national attention somewhat, and we were looking for something different. And we had gotten serious attention at one point, and we were having so much fun. It was this quartet. It was like the Beatles of the percussion world, and we're having so much fun, but we suddenly felt there was something we needed to do. So I asked around and I said, who's somebody who I could speak to? And I cannot remember who pointed that direction to you. So I said, okay, then I called you and met you in your office. And I remember you said to me, well, what you have to do is what I suggest is do what you're doing is very visual, very interesting, but you should choreograph it. Something like what the Canadian Brass are doing, and getting out there a little bit more scripted, more visual. It's because after all, it is theater, and I agreed with that. I said, the theater experience for me, I never wanted to be part of an orchestra dressed in black in the back and looking like you're attending a funeral. Nobody smiles. So when I was doing that circuit of as a background and a support musician, I loved playing the music, and of course I loved it because playing music is one thing. But as a career, sitting there, and you have to be in black, you have to look serious, you have to look like you don't enjoy what you're doing. To me, it just made no sense. And going to a concert, even worse, because you're looking at people. You might as well just shut your eyes and just listen. Being there didn't do anything for you. So when you mentioned that, I said that makes so much sense. So you gave me the phone number.
The arts really require some kind of uniqueness. I mean, if you're seeing the same thing, which we often do. I mean, even today we see a lot of hip hop but they all seem to be the same, except perhaps for their poetry. But to find your way in the larger audience of the world, you really have to become unique. You have to find one way of setting yourself apart from just about anything else that's going on. And that's part of what art is. I mean, that's the uniqueness of your imagination and your creativity.
Yeah, and I thank you for that, by the way, because that opening that door and introducing me and us to Brian McDonald at the time, who was one of Canada's great choreographers. He was doing the staging for Canadian Brass as well. He came in, and what a brilliant mind. And we would do, for example, a Bach fugue, and we would all play our parts. And he said, well, why don't you walk around with your voice? Well, that makes sense. Instead of standing there and waiting those 3 or 4 bars, move your voice to another instrument. So we would rotate, and so we're constantly moving around the stage. And it was so interesting, even for us. Then all of a sudden, you're carrying this voice, and the voice is moving. You're visually playing that voice as well as performing. Of course, you're adding another level of risk of missing your place. And we had a few accidents. That was fun. But it was amazing, even for an audience. And we get that all the time, because they would say, this is so much more interesting, watching and hearing what we're watching and watching what we're hearing.
His particular talent went beyond just choreography. He was very knowledgeable about music. And the last event that he and I collaborated on was a year after the 9/11 situation in New York City. We decided to do a memorial to it, and he chose the Verde Requiem, and decided he was going to choreograph it, and add that whole dimension along with these incredible visual displays on the back of the screen. So in Ottawa, we got together and put together this unbelievable orchestra and choir and full production, and you could see that every moment that he had of the music, every moment that the music was on, was totally related to his choreography, and it was a perfect thing to try to do. And that was unfortunately one of the last things he did before he passed away.
Right. Yeah,
but it was quite an event to participate in. I was a producer at that time.
Nice. No, I had great experiences with Brian, and he would, whether it was classical or some of the jazz things that we did or the world music, he always became very contextual, and he totally got it, and he brought something to it. It was like the missing element, the missing visual element to the music, which was amazing, and he was such brilliant. But you went on to not only, I mean, you in the Canada Council, you started the touring office, or you were involved in the touring office, and then became producer.
When I finished the touring office and decided to go out on my own, test what I had learned. And that's when I started to think of the many international great artists that I could find and bring to Canada, and also take Canada to those countries. But it accidentally started with Expo 86, where I was asked to find an attraction that would help to represent Russia. And that's when I decided I would go after the Kirov Ballet, which hadn't toured for 23 years since the defections of Nuria. And it took me a year and a half to negotiate, and so I spent a fair amount of time speaking to the Ministry of Culture. And finally, they agreed to let the company go on to this event. But they said, we want you to tour it on the way. And I said, sure, except you have to allow me to also go into the United States. And that's when it all started. So we did. They said yes, except for New York City. So we got a tour together, and it was one of the most successful ventures I've ever been involved in. And for 10 years, I represented the Kirov internationally in different countries, booking them everywhere. In fact, one year we had 3 of the Nutcrackers going on at the same time in 3 different countries around the world.
Nice. No, and I followed your. I mean, not only followed your work, I also, with Repercussion, we performed at Expo 86, and you were behind that, and also in '92, Expo '92 in Seville, in Spain. I remember that we were asked to be there. We were there for 10 days, and that was an incredible experience for us. And then I started learning.
That's when Celine Dion, we got her to go to Spain as well. It was her first venture into Europe.
Right. And I was there. I mean, we were at the Canadian Pavilion performing, and it was great because at the Canadian Pavilion, you remember, there was this room where they had books of Canadian authors, records of Canadian artists. So it was a nice kind of museum in the back of the place, and also they had a performance space outside, right within the pavilion. That was nice.
I designed that stage.
Beautiful.
With the water all around.
Yes, and the estrades. I mean, your back was to the building, but it was very well designed because you could see people everywhere, and everyone had a great vantage point.
It was done by the great Canadian architect Bing Tom from Vancouver, who in fact designed the whole space. And it was my suggestion that we put a stage there so that while people were sitting waiting to go in, sometimes 2 and 3 hours, they would have entertainment. And that worked out very well.
Oh, it was beautiful. Well, congratulations. I had no idea. And I'm not surprised that you had came up with that one. I remember while we were there, it was in June, and we were asked by the Quebec government on our day off to go perform in a little town called Aspertinas. I remember this clearly. And we went out there, and that's where I discovered some of the jamon and all these great foods that they had. They did this one live. CBC was there, and we did a live performance with CBC from Aspertinas on June 24th, which is Saint Jean Baptiste, the national holiday in Quebec. That was nice. Yes.
But getting the reaction of the local audience, of the local people, to something that was in a small town. I mean, you very rarely see a group like such as yours would come from afar
Yep.
and play for them. Usually they're filled with flamencos and all those other things. So that must have been a real experience for you.
Oh, it was amazing, totally amazing. I still remember it to this day the staging, the whole experience with the people and the whole interaction. That was nice, and I remember. I mean, you had a lot to do with some of the great people in this country, as far as guiding them also in their careers and offering ideas. So this whole idea of who you meet and what you yourself. I mean, what you have done over the years and still continue being helpful and getting out there and suggesting because you can, because you've done it, and you can be an objective observer and also say, well, think about this, and be the wisdom that they came to you from, not really a performing career, but from the backside, and allowing things to happen and being a facilitator. I mean, you've done some great things, John.
The greatest pleasure that I received from all of that was to actually see the reaction, once again, of local audiences to different things. Just an example, I put together a tour of Russia of the Royal Winnipeg Ballet.
Wow.
In a production of Romeo and Juliet. Now, I mean, that's cold to Newcastle, you see. I mean, every major ballet company in Russia has done the Romeo and Juliet. Well, they were very surprised. The audiences there were quite surprised at the originality and the simplicity of the particular production. And we had no idea we were going to get that kind of reaction. But here we are in the home of the Mariinsky Theater of Tchaikovsky, etc., and playing to an audience that just couldn't stop clapping. It was a wonderful experience. And that's where I get my pleasure. I stand behind it and say, what else can we now do?
Yes. Yeah, never sitting on your hands. No, you're absolutely right. And it's an incredible joy watching people's reactions. You just gave me an image that I remember when Repercussion first began touring. We were touring South America, and we went to Costa Rica, but also in Mexico. And Mexico stands out because I remember our first concert in Mexico City. No, it was our third concert because we had played Monterrey, Puebla, and then Mexico City, and we were from Mexico City leaving for Costa Rica. And I remember the last night we were at the big reception that was there, and people were just, they said, it's amazing. You people are from Canada, and you do this. I've never seen anything like it. And surprising, there was one gentleman who was there. The one gentleman who was there happens to be at the airport the next day. Okay, and he was he didn't tell me the night before, but the next day he was one of these guards, not guards, but a customs person leaving the country, and he happened to be at that point, and he said, I want to, and we used to travel with all our instruments, and this was like a ton of equipment. In those days we could, and we did. It was like a ton and a half of gear. So we'd always show up 3-4 hours in case there was a delay, and they had to go through all the instruments and cases. And he said, listen, I had no idea. I was in shock. I sat up all night. I just couldn't sleep. I couldn't believe that such music, such creativity, such level was in a place like Canada. I had no idea. And you just totally changed for percussion. Especially percussion. He still had shock written all over his face. He says, I can't believe it. So what normally would take an hour with our instruments to be checked in and looked at, and the carnet that we used to have, and our technicians couldn't believe it. Took like 10 minutes. He said, no, just just let it go through. These people should go through VIP everywhere. So that was nice.
But sometimes funny things happen. For example, I once took Le Ballet Jazz de Montréal to Russia, and the impresario wanted them to go further afield, so we actually went to Uzbekistan with this group. Right,
Wow.
This is the Ballet Jazz, and while we were there, we played to 6,000 seat auditorium, 6 performances, and it was sold out. But we had a call from Mongolia, a local dance ensemble who actually danced jazz, wanted to come and rehearse with us. And this is like 1,000 kilometers right away.
Wow.
So they flew in the next couple of days, and they did a remarkable job. But who would have thought you had a jazz ballet in Mongolia, right?
Right. No, it's amazing. It's amazing. And especially those days. I mean, now, the world being what it is and with the technology everyone has. But back in those days, it was just totally not obvious, for sure. But the fact is that it existed, it was there, and it was going on. It has been going on all the time, right? It's amazing. And
Well, we are not aware of what goes on. I mean, one of the things I was very fortunate to be able to be a part of was the very first visit of the ballet of the Shanghai Ballet to Canada from China, and this was the first cultural exchange ever created between the two. We organized the Toronto Symphony to go to China, and we brought this company to Canada, which was a huge success. But the orchestra, the people in China were hearing works that they had never heard before, played by a foreign orchestra. This was just a couple of years after the death of Mao. So
Right.
I was very fortunate to be involved in that, and to get a reaction of people. I had one conductor say that this got he was a young man hearing this, and it really propelled him to become a conductor, which he did become in Shanghai, of the Opera House.
nice.
Remarkable.
Yeah. No, it's amazing that influence. And I remember, speaking of China, with the repercussion, I think we were the first Western group to perform in Beijing on our first tour over there. And I think it was in 87. And we performed in Beijing, and we learned all our texts that we would normally do on stage. And I spoke most of the presentations. So I studied some Chinese, just the diction, to be able to say all my text. So I memorized everything, what I was going to say, including my jokes, my little jokes within that I would throw in. And the concert before, I think, was in Hong Kong. So we had to go to Taiwan first, then to Beijing, and then back to Taiwan. So I had practiced in Hong Kong this. I would say it in Chinese and then English. And then when in Beijing, when we were there, I noticed, of course, there was only one color, and it was dark green, everything. The parking lot of 1,500.
And bicycles.
Yes, the bicycles in the parking lot, 1,500 bicycles, all the same color, the same model. And I said to the promoter, at intermission, I went out for a minute, and I said, I have a question. When those people come out, how do they know it's their bike? They're all the same color, same. He says, oh, they know. There's never any problem. And then during the concert, after the concert, I would say, they really didn't get some of my jokes. He says, no, tomorrow we get you a translator.
Right.
I messed it up completely. But it's interesting, from that moment on, when I went back to China with our projects that we do with COSA and all of that I've done for the past 10 years, when I first went back at this one event, I said I would like to meet. There were a couple of percussionists I wanted to meet, and one of them was Li Biao, and another, I forget the other fellow. And he said, "Oh yes, well, one of them is here." So we spoke, and I said, I just wanted to tell you, I really enjoy your work, and I'm following what you're doing, and it's amazing what you're doing. Li Biao has now he's a percussionist, he's become a conductor. He did the opening ceremonies of the Olympics. He choreographed that, and Mr. Gong also was a colleague of his who was teaching at the conservatoire over there, and he stopped me short. He says, "Listen, when your percussion group came, we were in the audience. We were the students at the conservatory. When we left there, the world had changed for us. We'd never realized that you could do all of this with percussion. It just completely opened up. So you're a major inspiration." And I'm saying, no, I'm giving you compliments because I'm following what you're doing, and now they're telling you that they're paying attention, and then you realize, of course, we influence each other, and people influence us, and open the doors and show you some other ways of looking at things. Maybe sometimes just shining a light, or doing a performance, or an interpretation of something, or a creation. And
you could. I was going to say you could never go there, and I was there many times to China, without their wanting to show you something new and unique. And that's what I was there for. I wanted to see this, and we were able to look at the acrobatic troops, and
yes.
The last big project I did there was with the Red Theater in Beijing, a production that we worked on called Chunyi, The Legend of Kung Fu,
right?
Which was largely sort of a dance acrobatic troupe, which we then toured to London and to Toronto and a few other places. To see how remarkable these people were. But more than that, when they came to Canada, we would take them to Niagara Falls, for example, and they would just be beside themselves and seeing this incredible feature.
Right.
That was also part showing off what we can do as well, what we have. Yes.
Yeah. And I remember when you brought in, it was the Army Chorus or something from Russia also.
Alexandrov Red Army Choir.
The choir,
yes,
yeah.
I brought them about 3 or 4 times.
It was interesting
that was a revelation. That was a revelation to a lot of people, to have this incredible 90-piece choir and dancers group, but in which I taught them to sing "Mon Pays."
That's interesting.
And it was absolutely fabulous. Yeah.
But
the local audience really ate it up.
Yeah. No, and it's interesting. I someone like yourself who has, because obviously it's a lot of work, a lot of vision involved, a lot of knowing what to do, and the level of professionalism that you've always brought to the table, and make those things happen, because that's what it takes. Good experience, good professionalism, and you've always done that. I always personally admired you. I'm not just sending you flowers. I'm just saying the truth, that it's nice to see people really go out of their way because they can. They have the goods and they do it, and then other people benefit from that because they see this. They would have never otherwise have had the experience.
But just think of what it is you've done. You created an ensemble that not only plays just for its own pleasure, but takes that all through the world, and with a whole teaching component, so that people are sharing from different countries, different places. And the amazing thing I find about percussion is that people can talk to each other without even knowing their individual languages, and they know exactly where they are and what they're doing. So, but you probably have done more for that than anybody else has done in the history of this of music in these countries.
Wow. Well, thank you, John. I mean, once you realize how universal that language is, and you show up. I remember being in Greece, and that you just reminded me of a story. We were in Greece, in Athens, actually, and someone mentioned that there was an orchestra from Leningrad, I believe, that was staying at the hotel. They were also performing, but we were performing the same night or something. But at least we're in this in the hotel, and and then so I put the word out. I said I would love to meet them. So anyway, we found a way to meet each other. So we all landed up in one of our rooms, and we sat up all night playing because we didn't speak Russian and they didn't speak English, but we just played, and it was amazing. And then we afterwards we each said to each other, of course, all the fun we had, and of course they shared some of the great vodka they had, and some of the stories that we were able to share, but also like you realizing that you didn't really have to speak. You totally got it immediately, and that's amazing.
That's the part of music that touches us all naturally. I mean, we talk about the music of the spheres. I mean, the whole universe is based on waves, like music waves, and it's the one element in us that we all have to eat and we all have to find a place to live and sleep and all of that, but we don't have to find music, except it's natural. It's so natural to us to want to follow, to enjoy that aspect of our being. So a great gift that we have, and some people have a much better gift than others. Doesn't mean you can't enjoy it as much as others, though.
What are the I mean, if you were to give some not pointers, but some advice to someone who's in the beginning of a career today, what would you want to share with them from your experience?
We know that to really become a first-class musician on any instrument takes approximately 10,000 hours of rehearsal. I mean, and you can't get away from that, no matter how much you are a natural musician, to be able to get to a point where you have mastered what you want to do. So you have to be prepared for that part of it. Also, the frustration involved, you have to know it's going to take time. Don't give up. You'll get there. The point is you will get there because your hands, your brain, your mind has all these little brains in them. And the more you exercise those brains, the more capable you will be of performing. Just don't get frustrated. Don't give up.
And what about the part on a human level? I mean, part of what I have always believed in is you connect with people on a true level and have build friendships and relationships where mutual respect is involved, and always trying to help somebody, because by helping somebody you're also helping yourself and the people around you and the situation, right?
Well, the point is that there are musicians all over the world. It's a country all to itself. And once you start getting out there and once you start meeting these people, all kinds of things can happen. And that's one of the greatest ways of humanity coming together and being unified and not trying to kill each other instead of singing and kissing each other. I think that's the part of pleasure that you get the most out of, is when you finally meet someone, say from Africa or someone from Uzbekistan or whatever, and all of a sudden you realize you're on the same wavelength when it comes to music. There's nothing more gratifying, nothing more enjoyable, and nothing more meaningful, I think, in the existence of humanity.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. And I think for as long as one can, as long as you have your mind and your health, of course. That you know that works.
But watching the great conductors of the world and realizing how old they live to be, it has to do with the music that they're playing all the time or enjoying all the time. I think music does something to you. It propels you into a long future. I'm sad for those who have to pass on early, but a lot of look at the Rolling Stones, for example. I mean,
Unbelievable.
they can
And
go forever. Yeah.
yes, and I think Mick Jagger. They wind him up. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, he's a perfect example of someone who works out all the time and makes sure, because when he's on the stage, as long as he can, of course, he's gonna continue jumping. He's gonna, as long as he can sing and jump, there will always be that. Yeah, it's. I mean, he's a leader in that, and many are who manage to keep their health to be able to do that. But I think music has a big part, because you're active, you're
Yeah.
regenerating.
The other thing about today, of course, is that you have a much better opportunity to work with people that are far away because of the of technology. And I've been looking at some videos where you have about 50 young students all working together from different parts of the world. I mean, that is utterly amazing to watch what's going on there. But that's another way of developing associations and friendships and creative couplings. I think that we'll see much more going on as a result of that.
Yeah, yeah, and there are interfaces that are coming on the market as we speak that I just heard about, that there is no delay. You can perform live from like 5,000 kilometers or something. You can perform live with no delay whatsoever, and this technology is improving by the week. So yeah, I mean, we can.
When you get to be at a point where you can hardly walk anymore, you can use all that technology still to be in the world.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Anyway, but I want to thank you, John. This is, I mean, we can go on for hours and days and about philosophy and this and a little bit of history, but I wanted to bring you on because you are one of the key people that, sometimes management and producers don't get their due respect, just because we forget about them because we're thinking of the front. But if we don't have people promoting, people conceptualizing, people doing all the heavy lifting, things don't work. So it takes a whole team of minds, and you're definitely one of them in my book.
Really appreciate what you say. And I'm also appreciate your having me on as one of your guests. And I wish you the very, very best with this project. I think it's an important project, and I look forward to seeing it when it's complete.
Thank you, John. As I say, to be continued.